Hi everyone. Welcome. You're watching Conversations with Nia. I'm your host, Nia Blakamuzi, and I'm super excited for today's topic. We're all excited here. We're fired up. So today we'll be discussing the relationship between African Americans and Africans, bridging the gap, finding those solutions. So a little backstory. Ever since I migrated to the United States as a young girl in her teens, I noticed that there was a disconnect, a divide, a bridge between African Americans and Africans. And I grew up hearing Africans speaking negatively about African Americans and African Americans speaking negatively about Africans as well. Right. And so this really bothered me. Noticing the problem, I always wanted to have a conversation about it. And in so doing, empower our community as Black people across the diaspora to bridge the gap and fix the internal issues that exist. So with that, I am super thankful. I have this amazing panel, very robust, you're smiling, you're happy, to help me unpack the issues that exist within our community, and hopefully we can come to a possible solution. We don't expect to be perfect here today. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but it can get the conversation in other spaces and other areas going. So without any further delay, panelists, introduce yourselves, tell us about yourself, and let's begin the conversation.
Yeah, hello. I'm Sola Coleocho. I'm very pleased to be able to share with you guys the little bit that I know and some of my experiences.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
I'm Sabrina Collins. I reside in Washington, D.C., but I am originally from Daytona Beach, Florida. Very excited and honored to be here. Thank you.
My name is Jerron Rose. I'm a founder of Critical Hustle. Living in Houston, Texas, but originally from Los Angeles, California. Well, actually Compton, California. So I'm just happy to be here and give my West-South experience.
Okay.
My name is Christopher Terrell, originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Lived in Philadelphia for 5 years, but now, just like Jerron, I reside in Houston, Texas.
Hi, my name is Mfan. I grew up in Arizona. I've lived in 2 different countries, multiple states. So I'm just happy to be here and give my own perspective on my experience.
Hi, I'm Emmanuel Kalumbata. I'm the founder of Awakening Africa Group. And today I'm so excited to be here with you so I can share some experience as an immigrant from Africa. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Victoria Lula. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, but I'm from Houston, Texas, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, Victoria. All right, you guys, who's ready to get started?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. Let's go for it. So like I said earlier, the topic is the relationship between African Americans and Africans, bridging the gap, finding a solution. If you haven't already, please go ahead and share this so that we can have a community conversation. We want to hear from you guys, comment, ask questions, let us know your opinions. I will be reading the comments as we go through this conversation. So now let's begin with the questions. My first question to you guys is, in your opinion, what's the relationship between African Americans and Africans right now? From your perspective, in your opinion.
There's not much of one, in my opinion. If you don't mind me going first.
Yes.
There is one, but not a good one. There's not a lot of education to Africans on the true experience of African Americans since they were arrived here. I think a lot of African Americans are under the impression that they all came across in the transatlantic slave trade. And then there's just a disconnect because there's not an education of cultures. I know a lot of us as Americans have been indoctrinated into a belief system instead of being educated. And so since we have this indoctrinated belief, we have these negative perceptions of Africans that have been kind of taught or put on us. And so the relationship building process has never taken place. And so that's why there's not much of there's a relationship. There's just not a good relationship. And that's no relationship at all.
Well said. No relationship at all. Who wants to go next? Give me your thoughts, your perspectives.
I think that it's a very tense relationship and it's fragile. We have moments where we come together and it's usually after some event has rocked our communities. and or we have a celebration or festivals and everything is really fun and great, but this deeper connection that many of us would want to see or even long for is not there. And there's a lot of beliefs and stereotypes and generalizations that we feed into or that we hold on to, whether subconsciously or unconsciously. And those need to be addressed on multiple levels so that we can tighten that relationship and actually build a foundation so that it's not so fragile. So that if I have an issue with an African woman, that doesn't make my view of all African women fall apart because of that particular issue. So it definitely has to be strengthened with conversations such as this one.
Awesome. I feel like you agree so much with Sabrina. Do you want to add your 2 cents to that?
Yeah. So having grown up in Arizona, where when I grew up, there were, 5 Black people and half of them were from my families. It's seeing the relationship between Africans and African Americans. I've just noticed that, it's like Chris and Sabrina said. Sabrina said it's tense. Chris said there really isn't one, and sometimes it depends on where you live. So if you're in Houston, where there's a large African population, that might be more obvious. If you're in the East Coast, that might be more obvious. If you're in, Arizona, it's not really that much of you guys, so there's not really any need for being knuckleheaded about anything. So you might not. I didn't necessarily see an issue with the relationship between Africans and African Americans until I moved out of Arizona to California, and then I just saw this massive divide, and it was very jarring for me.
So shall I want to go to you? So Mfon is saying it depends on the geography. Like it's not spread across the board. What do you have to say? Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that has a lot to do with it because the more you run into somebody, the more interactions you're gonna have, the more differences you're gonna notice. I'm from Houston, so you have a bunch of Nigerians here, Africans here, you have a bunch of African Americans here. So you see a lot of you do see a lot of interaction. But I couldn't imagine. I did live in Arizona for a little while, so shout out to Arizona. I was in Phoenix. Yeah, so and over there, no, I mean, you're Black. If you're Black, you're just Black.
So I really want to ask you this follow-up question. So how would you define the relationship right now, right, with African Americans and Africans? So Sabrina spoke so positively, saying it's the stereotype. There's some tense. Chris said no relationship at all because it really doesn't exist. It's not positive. Would you agree with all of this sentiments?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes you can see there's some tenseness. I've been in conversations where someone may not know that I'm Nigerian, and there's this stigma that they feel like saying out loud, and they had no idea that I'm eavesdropping or whatnot. And then, of course, I'll speak up if I felt it necessary. And then there's times where same thing. I may not look Nigerian to a Nigerian or someone that's African, and they're saying some things, and it's like, wow. So I have seen some of that. And then at times, especially like the younger generation, sometimes you don't see it at all. You don't see any divide whatsoever. So I've seen both.
Okay.
Well, if I can go in there, I think the relationship is kind of a us and them perspective. I think a lot of times at least my experience has been, we're all together until there's a reason to say I'm separate. If there's a conversation and we might be talking about the plight of Black people in America, and then the statement becomes, well, we Nigerians or we Kenyans, it separates somewhere in that conversation. And being from California, I can agree. I don't really think there was a big separation until you went into, say, like a business or something like that was owned by someone of African descent directly. Then you get that separation between American Black versus African, or in times of just being a kid and hanging out with friends who lived in more affluent areas. So then you got a more African experience because culturally the family was first generation. So the kids, even though they may have been trying to culturally fit into the Black American stereotype, there still is a difference in how they present themselves and how they view certain aspects of the culture. So I think that my personal experience, I've never really had a bad experience, but I've always had that experience of, even if we were together until a certain point. And as an American Black, coming into the cultural aspect of like the males that were Nigerian, you had to be accepted. Like I was accepted through someone else that was, I guess you could say, as a mentor to me. He was accepted. So by him co-signing me, I became accepted, but almost at an arm's distance.
Okay.
And then at a certain point, it was like, you're okay. So I think, like I said, I think it's a us and them, but there is a relationship that exists that's pretty strong at first, just because we're all here. And no matter what happens against everybody else, we all look black on the surface. And then we choose to separate ourselves within that stigma.
You know, what I hear a lot of you say, I think this is the theme across the board, is when there's an interaction, then it really like opens up all of this can worms and wounds and perception. And that's really good. So Emmanuel and Victoria, let us know your thoughts before I dive right into the second question.
Okay, because my opinion is that growing up, you know, I was raised in Nigeria, but I was born in Houston. When I came back when I was in high school, I got bullied because I was my accent, you know, stuff like that. So now it's like my accent is cool because of the whole movement is going on, the whole Beyonce, you know, bringing the African culture in for music video and stuff like that. But now they're saying it's cool. When I was in undergrad, I have a professor. She was African American, and one of our midterm was we have to study the whole African map. And I think one guy, he was Ghanaian, and he was just like, "Why are we studying this? This doesn't nothing have to do with, you know, in our lesson." And then she was just like, because most of us in the class, we need to know where we come from. We need to know the culture. Because she said she's right now she should be like 70 something. So she said that she's been like to like 5 countries in Africa because she wants to know her roots. So we have to understand and embrace that. So right now, I think that because of the whole movement is going on, people, all the African Americans trying to like, okay, to adapt with the Africans and stuff like that, like, okay, we are one. But I think some African Americans still say that we think Africans are better than them. Like, why do you think you guys are smarter than us? Why do you think that you guys can get our jobs? You know, like if you go to like the medical center, there's most most Nigerians basically are in the medical field. There are pharmacists, engineer, and doctor. Even TSU. I went to TSU. When I go to the pharmacy building, when I went to the pharmacy building, there's mostly Nigerians are there. Even the engineer Nigerians. So some of the African Americans like, why do you think you guys are better than us? Like, you know, you go into the medicine, you trying to steal our jobs and stuff like that. So I think to this day, it's still like they think that we're better than them, and it's not.
So what I think you're saying, thank you for saying that, because this actually ties into the experiences, right? Your personal experiences. Emmanuel, I want to hear from you, then I'll go right into picking on what Victoria said.
All right. On my side, I can say everything is based on personal experience. Okay, like on my side, basically the only problem I can say I had it was because of the accent. You know, because most of the time when I used to meet all these like Americans, African American, like I've been in America like for 4 years now, and then most of the time, like on my first job, let me give you an example. Like on my first job, like most of the people that I had to meet, like on my first job, like I couldn't really see them different like from me because we're all black. And then first of all, by the time I got there, I thought maybe they're Africans, you know, like until I found myself like our English is totally different. And then they had to notice very quick, like, oh no, this guy has an accent. But I can see it's an issue that we can address, and then so we can, like, as I say, like the younger generation, they don't really take it seriously the way us we do, because most of the people, like most of the Africans, the younger generation who are like are born here in America, they're going to the same school with as these young Black American, and they're like the same people. But us coming from America, like, you know, I've been here for 4 years, and then you can feel the difference. You can see the difference, and then, but I think it's something that we can address, and then we can fix. But there's so much thing in common that we guys have. So I think it's.
Yeah. So Chris, yeah, please go for it.
Kind of to piggyback on what Emmanuel is saying, him being almost a first generation or someone who came directly from the continent to America, African Americans, at least of my generation and prior to me, the only education we have of Africa is when we got here. Like our African American history is taught as if Black people's history, as far as African Americans, are concerned, it says as if our history began at slavery. And so the great accomplishments of the continent of Africa were almost separated from the African American. And so kings like Mansa Musa, the great university in Timbuktu, that's information that African Americans should be able to identify with just as readily as Africans. And so I think there's a major disconnect because we're taught when we got off the boat, we were given the Bible or a beating. And so they took our drums away, they took our language away, they took the history away. And so when you take those foundational pieces away from a people, they don't have a way to identify. And then the media interjected with things like cartoons. Like I watched Merry Melodies as a child, and they always had an African with a bone in the nose or with big lips. And that was shown as being a negative. There was even a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Bugs Bunny, every kid's hero of my generation, that had to be banned. It was so racist against Africans. And so that disconnect, and I believe it was intentional, as I believe why, like when people like Emmanuel comes over, some African Americans, and I don't like to say African Americans because they're Africans too. They've just been away for a while.
Okay.
Some of the separated Africans don't want to identify with Emmanuel because they don't realize that Emmanuel and themselves are one and the same. Is we're all one people. Like they're Africans in Colombia, they're Africans in China, they're Africans everywhere. Everybody started out as an African. Like this used to be one big continent called Pangea, what scientists say. And Africa is the only one that's still connected to the globe. Everything else floats. So everybody was an African. And because we were always like, things like the term African booty scratcher, like we would be as kids calling our friends African booty scratchers as if an African person's butt doesn't itch differently or itches differently than an American dirty butt. If your butt is dirty, it's going to itch no matter where you're at, right? So we were given these negative connotations of our own people to separate us from identifying. And I've just heard from even other African Americans after hearing this and suffering this, because it is a suffrage for me not to be able to connect back to my brothers on the other side of the ocean. They're like, why didn't they come and get us then if they're like us? Like, well, they didn't know either. They were colonized. Like you guys are speaking English, but you're from Nigeria. But English isn't the common language in Nigeria. It's not the original language. So just like we were brought here and indoctrinated, you guys were colonized and indoctrinated. So a lot of the things that we thought we were being educated about were actually being indoctrinated and told this is how it is, and it was nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. So I think that's really where like the disconnect began. A lot of African Americans don't relate to the history of Africa. And then you got all these, it's social media days. So people saying, oh, you're not African, you're born in America or whatever. Okay, I may be from America, and so may my ancestors. But at one point, my ancestors that were in America started off in Africa. That's just human history, not racial history, not anything. Every human being's bones and DNA started in Africa, and it spread the globe. And that was thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, before religion became a big thing, before any of that. It was just how we were. And so that's why I believe a major disconnect comes about. Like me and, I was invited to this because I love Africans. I ask Africans about their history and experiences because I know I've been separated from that. But that's just, I was fortunate to be raised that way. But everyone's not that fortunate. My mom made me read it. So.
Chris, you make some really excellent point. I feel like a lot of people agree with your sentiment, and this is good. Thanks for really diving deep. I'm going to read some comments, and I want to come back to you guys. Whoever want to comment on what Chris just said. We have a lot of comments coming in, so I'll start with Ken. So Ken says, there is a level of ignorance too. There are racial epithets from both sides, not acceptable. Then certain resentment, like you are taking our women, you sold us, sometimes insecurity as well as crime against Africans by African Americans. So another comment here is from, let's see, Real Life, Texas, Houston Living. I think the generational view is key as well. The younger generation are coming up where where they recognize or can identify people of pop culture who are like them, and this helps to bridge the gap. Real Life Houston, Texas also said, also, there are more shows on media that allows you to see a diverse view of Africans and other Blacks here in the U.S. Was that clear, you guys? Were the comments clear? Okay,
Yes.
so who wants to follow up on what Chris just said? Creed made a lot of good points. Who wants to follow up on that?
So I'll follow up because, I'll say something that might sound that might irk some people, but in terms of the some of the comments that Chris made, because I'm Nigerian, and I have found that Africans tend to, and let me speak for Nigerians because I can't speak for all of Africa, but Nigerians tend to perpetuate this view of separation. For example, people hear me talk, and I'll tell people, don't let this light skin and this accent fool you. I have a green and white passport, but people will say, "Oh, you're not Nigerian." What, because I've been here all my life, or why am I not Nigerian? And so if you can tell me that I am not Nigerian, who has the same parents as you, can cook the Nigerian food that you don't even know how to spell, then imagine the kind of relationship you're having with your African American brother or sister who would love to have that connection. You're not even allowing them to have it. And so I think that is one issue that I've experienced. And Chris brought up so many good points. When I was in college, I didn't realize, I made an effort to go and meet African Americans because I grew up around a lot of Africans. And I found out that they didn't know anything about the continent. In fact, I thought it was one country. And a lot of them said, look, I went to school. This is what I was taught in school. I wasn't taught about you guys. It's a lot of the stuff that Chris said, from the shows to the videos to how Africans were spoken about. A lot of them said, hey, I didn't even know you guys had these nice houses in Nigeria. It was just they were very, very shocked and flabbergasted. They said it's always crazy to us when you see Africans that come over to school and they have the kind of money that I've never seen in my life as an African American, but that's because of the indoctrination that has occurred. And so I want to put the onus on Africans to be the ones to break that indoctrination, to say, hey, you're brown, whatever shade of brown or black you are welcome, right? So that's all I have to say.
No, that's good. Shala, I think I want to hear from you because you kind of have similar experience with Umfa, don't you? Right? Where you're not accepted on both sides. And before you comment, I do want to say we don't have only Nigerian Africans here. We have someone from Congo as well. So it's not just like Nigerian heavy, just so you guys can make sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm from Congo.
Right, Emmanuel, you're from Congo, right?
Oh, yes, I am from Congo.
Awesome. So let Shala go ahead and respond to what Umfa said. Then anyone else can take it from there.
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of that experiences, whereas I grew up here. My parents conceived me in Africa, but I was born here in Illinois. So my entire culture has come from just American culture. They didn't attend the parties or the weddings or any of that stuff. So I don't speak Yoruba, though I'm a Yoruba name. So when I'm speaking to someone that's African and I say, yeah, I'm actually African, I have to pronounce my name. Shola, I have to do it before they can accept me, right? And then at the same time, being that my name is, Olushola, right? And going to school, having to explain to them, this is who I am, and getting a little pushback because I'm African. So it wasn't until I started either doing hip hop, rapping, or sports, definitely sports, and then trying to find some kind of commonality and some common ground before I can finally get accepted. And that has happened throughout my whole entire life.
And I'm so glad you shared that, but I feel like now we're shifting the blame to Africans maybe a little bit, but Victoria said earlier that African Americans think we're here to steal their stuff or steal their job, for lack of better words, and steal other things. So Chris or Jerome, let's say from Jerome. Jerome, do you agree with this? Is it one-sided? Have you had negative experiences with Africans?
So again, I haven't had a negative experience.
Okay.
What I will say is that part of the disconnect issue is the reason why we're here. So, and what I mean by that is, if your family came from Africa to come to America, you came for a better opportunity or what you perceived to be a better opportunity than where you were. African Americans, this is all we know. So like we don't have a place to seek for a better opportunity. So even when if you take Chris is way deeper than I am, but if you take it and say, well, I want to know more about Africans, there is a African American aspect that has to have a desire to want to know about where you came from, past just, okay, we were slaves, here's all the great history, because they give us Black History Month and they get all these like speckles of things that are, you guys did this and you guys did that and you guys did this, but that came from somewhere and nobody ever takes the time to address. But one of the things that I talk about now with other African Americans is like, you have to really begin to understand that you're still trying to fight for opportunity in America because the oppressor is still America and the opportunity is America, and you're fighting all these different things. So that creates a separation between Africans coming over, and it's not so much that they're trying to take a job, because you're not taking a job. You're not doing anything different than what you're supposed to do. I came from California to Texas, and I tell people the reason why I was able to do so much more is because in California, it's a rat race. You completely feel like it's a rat race. I come to Texas, I'm like, you guys don't see this opportunity? So I jump on everything, and it's easier for me to wake up at 5 a.m. and go be there because I came for opportunity versus I'm dealing with the stress of what it is to be Texas. Like, I don't know anything about the them and the they that's going to keep me from doing anything. In California, we don't have traditional deep South racism, so we don't think about a they. I worried about gangbangers. I wasn't worried about the Ku Klux Klan coming to get me. So in relation to Africans, I think it becomes that competition in the fact of you're going to go harder because you see an opportunity, whereas I might be just trying to get a job. Like, I'm just trying to figure out how to pay a bill and improve my family that's here, where you might be, hey, I'm going to go here and the US dollar is this compared to that. So I'm going to send this small portion and it's going to do a lot of important things back home and I can thrive here. And I think that's the difference that comes when you get there in the jealousy. Because like you said earlier, African Americans are not used to seeing that type of money or that kind of affluence come from Black people. And it's like, wait, you got money already and this. Whereas this person might be from, I went to TSU as well. So this person might be from South Park and they're trying to be a pharmacist and they're the only one in the history of their family to ever have an education, so they're just looking at, they're battling their own demons, feel like they got to battle the person next to them. And, Black people in America tend to feel it's not even tend to, are kind of at the end of the totem pole because we didn't migrate. We didn't come here for opportunity. We were here to be somebody else's opportunity.
And we were the opportunity.
Right. We're the labor.
Wow.
Powerful.
That's true.
Who wants to add anything to that? Anyone wants to add to what Jerron said? Sabrina?
Yes, one thing that I really focus on when I speak with people about these types of issues is when we're looking for blame. A lot of people say, well, that's not fruitful, but we have to look at where these divisions came from.
Right.
Who started the stereotypes and the generalizations? Who created the division on the continent, in the Caribbean, because we can't forget our Caribbean and European brothers and sisters either.
Amen.
Right.
So we have to look at who started this, and it wasn't anybody sitting here. It wasn't our
That's true.
So when I'll just say it, when we look at that, and I'm not saying go out and hate all white folks for whatever history brought us, but we need to look at that and look at the role that those things play. Just like I said a minute ago, we were the capital in the capitalism. So that's
sister.
I grew up
true.
in Florida. We didn't really have everybody was Black or white. We had African Americans, meaning United States American Blacks, and then white folks in the South where I was from. But my earliest understandings of Africa were from Busch Gardens. And at that time, Busch Gardens, which is a theme park, if anyone doesn't know, the name that they always went by was the Dark Continent. And the only thing that you knew about it was the animals. And so if you go to Busch Gardens, then you see the people who are basically, at that time, were basically dressed up in blackface, pretending to be Africans, associated with the animals. So but they racked in millions of dollars, and they still do rack in millions of dollars. The slave trade, sugar, cotton, all of these wonderful things came from that. And so when we're looking for, okay, why is this happening? What can we do? We really have to address those issues and recognize that and the harm that has been done to all of us. Because
very well said. I'm going to come back to what you just said, Sabrina, but I want to read this comment from Ratoria Hogan. She said, my negative experience as a so-called African-American woman is being judged because of our cultural differences, right? So does anyone else, maybe who else can talk about their negative experiences, and then we can dive right back into what Sabrina touched on and maybe even what Jerron touched on. Any other negative experiences, stories you want to tell? Has any African-American here been called that name or know of this name, Akata, that Africans tend to call African Americans? Anybody know of that? Anybody? No? Have you heard?
I don't know that one, but I will tell you, and I'll try to make it quick. I interned in with the Supreme Court of Ghana for a couple months, about 5 years ago now. And it was an incredible sacrifice to be there. I had to buy a ticket to West Africa in about 2 weeks. So we can imagine the cost. It was rough. And I had to leave my daughter behind so that I could put myself ahead. So there was I don't know if it was that word. They were speaking in, I think, Ewe. But I finally asked, like, what is this word that you guys are using? And I forget the word, but it translated as white lady. So I'm looking around like, who's the white lady? I made to find out I'm the white lady, right? So I chuckle about it now, but in that moment, I was so hurt and infuriated. Because what the one person who was really using it, he wasn't doing it to be evil or malicious, but he saw this huge gulf between us that he couldn't possibly imagine us having any commonalities. He couldn't imagine us being able to relate to each other at all. And so I had to wrap up all of those emotions that I was feeling because I was really like, I had to remember I was at work. It was that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And have a discussion about history, about social injustice, about my personal sacrifices for being there on the continent. And so that was just one experience, but I've heard that sentiment expressed before. And it wasn't because of my complexion, or obviously I'm not what we would consider a white lady, but because I'm American. And so different that, I need this title. But in that one word or phrase, he created such a gulf between me and him, between our ancestors, between our communities. And that's the kind of stereotyping and the type of sentiment that we have to address to move forward.
So Jackie Harry said, I've heard that. So that's the word, that Kata word. She's heard that. And she said, I dated a Nigerian guy. So she's familiar with that word. And I think Nigerians and Ghanaians use that word very, very well. Chris, have you heard that word? Or any derogatory terms used?
No, but what Jerron said and what the young lady said just gets my mind thinking.
Okay.
Someone mentioned that it wasn't, all of us have a commonality, and that's we've all had to deal with the European. And just from my research in the European, that's a taught behavior. That separating, finding every reason to separate instead of finding commonalities. And we do it like almost subconsciously. Like I'll find a reason that I'm better, that I'm taller, that I'm shorter. As an African American, one of the things they have is called the Willie Lynch letter, and the Willie Lynch letter talked about, and he got this from a European, so it wasn't something he created; it was something that was passed down to him. But it was about separating people based on complexion, height, weight. I'm light skinned, dark skinned. When I was growing up in the '80s. Until like Bobby Brown and Wesley Snipes became popular, it wasn't cool to be darker complected.
Yes.
Like you wanted to be light complected with good hair, even that term, good hair. Like the first hair, like if you go back and date I'm gonna say the first woman, because we all came from a woman, right? That's probably gonna mess some people's heads up, right? We all came from a woman. So that first woman's hair, was kinky. It had to have been. Kinky. You think Jesus's hair was kinky in the Bible description? Think about the first Black woman. She's the mother of all hair. And so it had to be kinky. But nappy hair is a bad thing. You got good hair if your hair is closer to being recessive than it is close to being dominant. And so those separating ways sound like what the sister experienced. His brother was trying to separate her from himself by calling her white lady, not because of her complexion, but by her acts. And her being an American like myself, or an African American, all we've been taught is by white America, by the slave master. Our culture was learned from them. They took our culture that you guys can share with us. And I think that's a major thing. I think a lot of African Americans see resentment towards Africans because we don't have a language of our own to speak. When two people are speaking a foreign language in an elevator and you don't speak it, it's almost like, why you guys choose to speak that language when I'm in front of you? You talking about me now?
Right.
You get that guilty conscious about it. And so us as African Americans, our language became hip hop. We finally got a language to speak of our own. We call it hip hop music, but we don't have an actual tongue that we can go to. Like the English tongue is nasty. It's ugly. It's a bunch of cursing. Like I would, I could. Those things didn't exist prior to us coming here. That's a lot of what happens. We get I would do it. I could do it instead of I am and I will. So all of those ways of separating us, differentiating us, her being called a white lady, not because of her looks, but because of how she carried herself. But she only carried herself in a way that she was, I'm not going to say taught, indoctrinated to carry herself, and me the same. So it's sad.
You know what? I'm going to come back. You're making some really good point as well. Let me read some comments. I want to come back to what you said because somebody has a different opinion from you in the comments. Yes. So let's read this. A real life Houston, Texas said, Akata woman. I've heard this so many times from an unnamed source who is on this live chat. I'm not going to get in trouble. Uh-oh. Who are we calling out? And then Lisa Hardy said, I have been married to a Nigerian man for 21 years, and I'm still not accepted by a lot of African women. And it's very disheartening, especially having 3 kids with him. Yo, this is a real life experience, and it's not easy, right? And see, do you fashions, don't you said real life. Exactly, real life. Now, this is a comment that differs from you, Chris, and I think you, Jerron, as well. I said, the European never makes your mind up for you. So you guys are saying it's something that's probably,
I want to respond to that when you.
I do too. His name is Michael Ray Freeman, which is an American name, and he's saying the Europeans never make your mind up. His name is Michael Ray Freeman.
Let me just throw this thing in there. So the thing that, going back to how it originally comes to the issue, with slavery and everything there, I think one of the biggest divides that we don't touch on, but everybody throws the word around loosely, is community. Black or African American, whichever, we don't really have a true sense of community. If you go anywhere where there's a Nigerian or African community, like people shop together. It's the same if you see in Hispanic, if you see Jewish, if you see all these other communities, they shop and live amongst each other and function amongst each other. Black people don't have that. So the separation that Chris mentioned, like in the elevator, of 2 people speaking a language, that's a sense of community. That's a sense of conversation where that's part of the breakdown. So it's kind of like you said, inherent separation that comes in, because truthfully, when you think about it from that standpoint, the only community that we would actually fall part of, which is part of our issue, is with that European, with the European people that are here, because we speak that language. That was the language that we understand. They don't speak any African language. They don't speak Spanish. They don't speak Thai. They don't speak anything. They speak English like we speak English. But there's still the separation because we don't identify with those people. So that separation continues to happen, and it fosters, like the young lady said, that she's not accepted by other African women because she's not seen as part of that community because she doesn't speak that language. She doesn't there. It's almost the equivalent of saying you married outside of your race. You married somebody who doesn't understand where you come from or who you are. And so to Michael's statement here about the European never makes your mind up, not now, no. But historically, we got 400 years of decisions being made for us to where, no, you don't make my mind up. You've done all the work to where I now think like this. It's not what you make happen now. It's the seeds have been planted. I tell people this. We are 3 generations from slavery. My great-grandmother picked cotton as a free in Georgia. So I'm the first one to go to college. My mom is the first one on the matriarch side to buy a house. So when you start thinking about how far you go back, there's certain thoughts that come into it. Chris, you probably can relate to this. My grandmother told her daughter to go find a good husband and raise a family. She told my mom, you know what, you find a husband, you find a good job, you do that. My mom's whole thing was go to school, get an education, because that's supposed to be the difference. We're still fighting all these other things. And then when you add in the fact of, if you come directly from Africa, you know where you came from.
Right.
You know, like, look, we come from this rich history. So when I go to America, I'm upholding this. We're still sitting here trying to save a culture, save a people, trying to figure out our own identity. So I agree with him. Europeans don't make my mind up now, but I'm still fighting the minds that they made up prior to me getting here to make sure that I can create unity amongst the people and create a community.
Gerard, well said. I want to come back to you, but Shola, I haven't heard from you. And then Emmanuel and Victoria, I want to hear from you guys as well. Before Chris, you can go on afterwards. So, you want to jump on this? Well, Michael. But hey, Michael made a comment. He said LOL, so he thinks it's funny. Right? He thinks it's funny. Yeah. So, whatchamacallit? So, Shola, I want to hear from you, and then Emmanuel, Victoria, then back to Chris.
Yeah, let's do this. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody that's showing up. A lot of my people, what's up, Mike? A lot of my people have shown up, and I just want to let y'all know that I appreciate it, the support and all that. But one of the things that we gotta see is that there's now an openness, and I thank you, Nia, for this. There's now an openness to try to figure out what's going on and how we can come together. And there's some things I don't know if everyone's ready for this, but I have to say it. I'm here, so.
Go for it. Please say it.
There's a thing called culture, and that's what everybody's kind of holding on to is their culture. This is my culture. This is your culture. And culture is just an extended fad. That's all it is. It's just an extended fad. And a lot of my fellow Africans, we kind of get this air about us that we're the OGs of this black thing. And even I think Christopher alluded to kind of how everything is Africa and comes from Africa. And I understand and I've heard that. I'm somewhat educated on that. But what you need to understand is that there's a heritage, and that's the one thing that we all have in common. And before you like heritage, before you look at that, heritage comes from a place, and I'm not going to be religious about this, but we have to go to where it goes. Heritage, if you look it up, the third definition, it's hidden, but the third definition of heritage is the ancient Israelites, the chosen people of God. If you look at it, now in Jeremiah 17:4, he said, I will cause you to discontinue in the heritage that I gave you.
Okay.
I will cause you to discontinue in the heritage in which I gave you. One thing about heritage is it's you. If you go back further and further and further, you'll find yourself. And heritage will never reject you. Whereas cultures, this fad, right, this long fad will say, oh, you're not like us. Like Christopher was saying, the hip hop culture is something that has embraced American black people, right? And so that culture can say, oh, no, you're not like us. And then the African culture, the cultures from Africa, whether it's the way we dress or the food that we eat or the things that we find fascinating, will say, oh, no, you're not like us. We value education and things like that. But if you look, Western Africa was populated by a certain people. If you go to Portugal, you'll see that there's a place called Lagos. Now, who's familiar with that word, Lagos?
Yeah,
there is a place in Portugal. Okay. That's where we get our name.
That's where right? So Lagos is in Portugal. Well, guess who populated all of West Africa? It was the Portuguese. If you go to Brazil, so Nigeria is the most populated African or black country in the entire world. Nigeria has more blacks in that one small area than anywhere else. About the size of Texas, maybe a little bigger. Then you go to the next most populated black country is Brazil. Brazil speaks predominantly 2 languages. Besides English, they speak Portuguese. And Yoruba.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
Okay. So in Portugal, where they kept the Israelites that's where they kept the Jews, is a place called the ghetto. Well, guess where American blacks are predominantly from? The ghettos. So you're starting to see this link thing, right? You're starting to see all these links in where our heritage originally comes from. And like I say, some people are not ready for that. But now that the 400 years is over, you think about from 1619, which was August 19, 1619, right? The first ship came to America. And then August 19, 2020 is actually when it ends. And some people say, wait, 1619, 2020. Do the math. You'll see that the 400 years ends there. So now we have this openness and we can talk again about our heritage. And so look at Jeremiah 17:4, where God is actually saying, I will cause you to discontinue in the heritage in which I gave you.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then you'll start putting the links back together and seeing, wait. So if we're just trying to hold on to this culture, what are we missing about our heritage? And that's a commonality. Instead of looking at the Europeans and saying, well, let's connect to the fact that the Europeans are against us. That's not going to help you. You can't identify with that.
No, that's very heavy. And I feel like a lot of people would disagree with that. I can see on Paul's expression, like, but you know what? You shared a lot of nuggets. But I will come back to you guys. Let me read some comments and we'll come back, okay? Because I still want to hear from Emmanuel. I still want to hear from Victoria.
Oh, yeah. I think I've got so many things to do.
There's so many things to do. Are we going to finish it up in 1 hour? I do not know. Because time is close. So Jackie said, I've definitely seen the African woman and Black American women have tension. It's probably on a smaller scale of how Black American women look at white women who date Black men. Right. So another comment here is from Jeff Rodriguez. This is good. Jeff said the Europeans have created the same divide in the so-called Latin culture on the global scale. The more we Latin people look or act like Europeans, the more they accept us, the less our own people accept us. Much love. I see you, Shola. Shola for your people, right? Okay. So we have some questions here about how do we create an inclusive community, but we'll come back to those questions, you guys. I do want to read this comment from Mercy. It's a very long comment. I think it's very important that we go back to you guys, the panel. Let's see if I can find this comment. Wait, first this comment. This is good. Elena, I'm Ghanaian and was born in Ghana. It's almost meant to shame me for being considered progressive or going against tradition. This is the word akata, right? Whenever you disagree with them, you're an akata. So kind of similar to what Sabrina said. They see you as different, and then they call you that term. All right. So Mercy, if I can find Mercy's comment. Okay. So Mercy said, this is really interesting. Personally, the mindset I have, to which has been for donkey years, is that division within the Blacks has always existed and will always exist. The difference of positive influence is what I, as a person, will do differently to curtail it around my environment. If we all think that way, a huge change will be seen. But a solution to completely erase it is what I don't think is achievable, but we can manage it. Ooh, that's heavy. We can come back to that. But who wants to go next? Chris, Emmanuel? Let's hear from Emmanuel. Okay, Emmanuel, Victoria, Chris. Okay.
All right. I think I'll start where Chris started because I think Chris really talked about some really good point.
Okay.
First of all, the media played a huge role in disconnecting, Africans with the rest of the world. Because I remember when I got in America, when I started having friends, American friends, the first question I asked them, do you know about Africa? They were like, oh yeah, we know about Africa because we saw it on Disney Channel. It's just like a jungle,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's something that they really need to be educated about. And then thanks to technology, everything is connected right now. And then they can be able to see everything. And us as Africans, when we came here, that disconnect, I can say, first of all, is about the difference about culture. Number one. Number two is about our language barriers.
Okay.
They always say, no, these are Nigerians, and I know Nigerians are most popular here. More there are a lot of countries in Africa, but Nigerians have more, I can say, more impact because most of the Black Americans, African American, when you ask them a question, they always say, oh, are you from Nigeria? So those are the stuff. like I think we really need to consider it. And then to reply to Michael, I think Michael would say like Europeans, they didn't make us our mind.
Yes.
I think we need to come back like where everything have started, you know, because those guys, when they came to Africa, they have destroyed everything. You know, they've destroyed everything. They stole our culture, our identity. They come up with religion. So they came up with everything. So they took our identity and then they bring theirs. Like, hey, you guys need to do like this. You know, you guys need to dress like this. You guys need to sing like this. So you can be considered by the rest of the world. So I think if you go back to what everything have started, like if people can read the history, like especially our generation or like the younger generation, they can really read, they can be they can have the history available for them, they can really understand, you know, like where we all coming from. And then I think that's where we can come up together. And then because remember, if we come together, we're going to be like we can create like a very powerful community. So I think it's something that we need, like this kind of discussion need to be like more often.
Yes.
For a lot of people to know, you know, especially about our culture, our identity. And I really like what Ghana, they did last year, the year of return.
Yes. Yes.
You know, no matter where you are, they say as long as you black, come to Ghana, and then you become a citizen. You know, we don't you don't need to show us anything. You just come to Ghana, and then because we believe you're from African, because your ancestors have been taken from Africa. So you can just come back, and then you can be like, you know, we can find you, like it's gonna be your home. It's gonna be your home, because a lot of Black American are very disconnected from Africa, from where they're coming from. I think that's where the real problem is. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Emmanuel, you say so many great things, and I really want to emphasize this role of media. And I think we've all said it, right? Chris said it, Jerome, you said it. Media has a very huge role on just pushing a certain agenda, making you see certain things, right? We're seeing what more whitewash media. So let's really understand the role that media plays, right? So I have a lot of comments coming through. I cannot go through all the comments, you guys. It's a lot, but please, you know, respond to each other, and I'll try my best to get through all the comments. Victoria, I want to hear from you. Then we can just go back into it.
Okay, so I think also our parents too played in the role of this cultural differences, because I'm gonna say, like, I have some aunties and uncles when their child wants to get married to like a person that is not Nigerian, especially Nigerian. Like when we marry somebody outside of our race, it's a problem to them too, because I remember one of my aunties was just like, don't marry somebody outside your especially your village. Don't marry somebody, they have to stay in the village. So when her daughter is like, okay, I'm bringing somebody that's African American, no, they don't have cultural, they don't know our culture, they don't know our language. So, and I feel like, you know, when I interject, and I was like, auntie, what if he understands, he gets to know our culture? No, they don't have respect, the way they greet us, you know, like the Nigerian man, when they come to a girl's house or their parents' house, they always have to prostrate, or the women have to kneel down. So if the African American, they come and they say hi, and then we, like an African auntie, will feel disrespectful. We're like, who's hi? Like, am I hi? Like stuff like that. So this is like, no, you have to kneel down and say, like, call them mother or ma or something like that, or mama. So that's why I feel like it's like for my parents too. Like the media shows that, but our parents do like beat us in our head, like, you know, some of the African Americans, they don't have culture, like, you know, don't marry these, you know, of course the word akata, you know, they don't have culture or stuff like that. So I feel like, like in my head when I see akata, I'm like, my parents said stay away from akata. So that's me. I always wanted to like open up and just date outside of my, you know, my community. Like, okay, let me just give an African American a chance, you know, because my parents is growing up saying that don't date these people. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm trying to date someone that is outside of this scene. And I mean, I like African Americans. I do. You know, when I go back to Nigeria too, they think I'm African American. It's vice versa. When I go to Nigeria, they'll be like, because you have that blue passport doesn't mean you forgot your root. I do get that a lot when I go back to Nigeria, because I still have the Nigerian accent and the American accent. So I switch up, you know. So it's vice versa. They still think like, even though I'm Nigerian, when I go to Nigeria, they think like like they brainwashed me to be, you know, African American. You know, like when I go back, I say my name's Victoria. It's like, no, your name is, because my Nigerian name is Falashade. It's like, your name is Falashade, not Victoria. Like, you know, that's a white person's name. Victoria is a white person's name. Your name is Falashade. You know what I mean? You know, so I feel it's vice versa too. When I go back to Nigeria, they still think that I don't have culture. Yeah, like I'm not like they think that because I grew up in America. Even my auntie was telling my mom, "Why you allow this girl to grow up in America? Why can't your children just grow up in Nigeria? Why do they have to go back? You know, because they're gonna be brainwashed. They won't know their culture. They don't know how to cook. You know, our food. I love cooking, so I mean, I have to pick it up. I have to start picking it up. My mom,
Victoria, really good point. I'm going to talk to this so we can get to other people, but really good point. And I can really touch on culture. And that's what Doyi said right now in her comment. Even some Africans don't even understand their culture. We have a long way to go. But can I just say, you guys, and Shola, you're very popular in the comment section, okay? Like, what is going on? So Mercy just said, why is everybody all on Shola, who seems to be quiet? I guess he has a lot of fans here, right? And Doyi is like, Victoria, girl, stay focused. I'm looking at Shola. You guys, Shola is married. Okay, yeah. Stay on track, stay on this conversation, okay? All right. And then Michael's here again. He said, well, he's been vocal. He's just content and intellectual. That's powerful, sister. Another comment I want to go through is from Lydia. It's funny that we never speak on this subject, but it's definitely on a lot of people's minds because of the division, as if we are not the same. We are seen as the same until the accent comes out, and that is so powerful. So a friend of mine, just go through more comments. A friend of mine, Linda, made a comment earlier, and I do want to go back to this comment though. But in the meantime, Chris, you have anything to add? Because I've been holding you down.
Yeah, no. The sister was saying something, and it's funny to kind of show our connectivity. She says her elders say, you know, you need to marry a man from Nigeria while you're dating that African American man. Well, here, you know, we don't have the different culture like that. We have white people. So if a brother was to bring a white girl home, the first thing his mama would say, why you bring that white girl in my house? You better not even come back home here with no white girl, you know. And so the culture is different, but the action is the same, you know. And so what I think what fails us a lot is that we have so many similarities again that we look for the differences instead of looking for the similarities that can connect us. You know, we're connected by more than just color. We do things like we love drums. Like if a drum plays, we're all going to get that vibration inside of us because a drum has been a way that we've been speaking for thousands of years. Even before we spoke a spoken language, we had a drum. So that it put a smile on my face. Not that she had to have that experience, but to see that me and her have something in common. Like I've heard members of my family, like my dad remarried a white lady. I mean, and she was a beautiful person for him. But you would hear, well, why your daddy married that white woman? He better not bring her over here. Like it's the same thing. Like because he didn't have he didn't have a bad experience with my mom. They just weren't meant to be married. You know, they had me and my brother, so it worked out, right? But you would hear from other people, your dad got that white lady. Why is your daddy sitting at your graduation with that white lady? Because he ain't married to my mama no more. Like that's his business, you know. And so I'm not gonna judge him by that. Like someone from Nigeria necessarily shouldn't judge this sister because she got out and got other cultures under her skin. It probably broadened her horizons on the human family by being able to leave Nigeria and come here and see how other people reacted.
I do want to say, if you're watching this, please share, okay? Share this so more people can join in and watch. This is a really good conversation. You know, I see like the panelists, you guys have people here representing. Shola, your people are here. Chris, this is awesome. Sabrina, everyone has people here representing. That's good. So Linda said, this is to Victoria's comment earlier. She said, that is your responsibility to indoctrinate them on what is an appropriate greeting. Remember you mentioned that, Victoria? So she's responding to you. I do like this other comment, though, by Jay Pulaski. He said, I'm just here supporting my brother, Shola, trying to understand my role and responsibility to support all people of color at this important time in history. Much love, and it starts with education and communication. And this kind of leads me to my next broad question for everyone. You guys know what just happened with the George Floyd, the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And I felt like that also opened a lot of worms, to be honest. So do we feel that helped bridge the gap, or that made us separated. I heard people say, oh, Africans are not black. I had a lot of nasty comments online. So what you guys think? Yes, which is interesting. And I know I posed that question to the panel behind the scene. Like, what is black? How do you define black? So answer my first part question. The Black Lives Matter movement, did it help? Is it helping? Is it causing a divide? Or is it connecting us even more? And what would you define as black?
That's good. I want to take that, please.
Uh-huh.
So there's a couple of things, right? It's two questions. One, did that cause a divide? And is it bridging the gap? You have to understand that you have the American Black people have sustained some horrendous things, right? And because of that, they're over kind of nursing their wounds.
Yes.
And then they see prominent people, that come from the African continent, that's coming in and saying, yes, you know, we're black. We understand. And so the people are saying, no, you don't understand, because you didn't have to deal with this for these 400 years and these generations of these kind of things. Yeah, you may have dealt with some other things back in your nation, but here you didn't deal with these kind of things. And so I understand that, right? And then at the same time, they're saying, but today, we're talking about today, here I am, and I'm being prejudiced against, like you are, right? There's still a racial division in this country, even though I may have come from Africa not too long ago, but I'm dealing with what today's society is doing against me. So there wants to be like this community thing going. And then at the same time, I also want to speak on playing a victim. So if you're victimized, there's always going to be a reason for me to say, well, I was harmed more than you, or I was harmed this way. And all the people that were harmed like this, let's say, and I hate to use this example, but the Me Too movement, all the same type of people were harmed in one way. And so they all make a community. And they're not doing it on purpose to cause this divide, but we were harmed in this way and you were harmed in that way. And our way is worse than the way that you were harmed. And that's not going to help. You're not bridging any gaps like that. And one way I would say to bridge the gap is to try to go deep and to find out who you are. Like, that's important. Find out who you are, because I guarantee all of us is lied to. Here we are speaking in a tongue that's not, it's not original to any of us. And so when I asked my parents, could you give me like history like 600 years back, and they were mute. And I was wondering why. Of course, you could tell me about the kings that I came down from, and they couldn't tell me anything 600 years prior to today, present day. And so I started with my own research, trying to find out where do we start? Where is the thing? Because the slave trade didn't happen in Egypt. So you can't say, oh, we all come from Egypt. It didn't happen. It wasn't happening there. It was the west coast of Africa. And so just kind of going back to what I was talking about, the west coast of Africa being populated by the Portugal and the Spanish. And the role of the Spanish and the Portugal in the slave trade. And you can start going there and starting to kind of see who you are, and then find out who those people are. Who are the people that were in Portugal and Spain in the 1400s? Who were they? And I guarantee you will lead back to that Jeremiah that I was talking to y'all about.
Yeah, makes sense.
Fawn, I haven't heard from you, girl. What do you have to contribute? What would you define as black? And do you think this whole Black Lives Matter movement helped, or did it cause more separation, segregation, divide?
Well, I don't really like using the term black in general.
Okay.
Just because we're all just people, because it just creates a division that it's unnecessary. But the movement, to the extent that it caused people to be aware.
Okay.
Long-term effect, you never know. But the awareness was what I was really happy to see. I hate to say that. I was happy to see the awareness, because it didn't just come from, people that look like me that were aware. It was people that had no association with, collard greens or okra or egusi or whatever it is. They were now aware of this experience that African Americans have been having for, since they've been here.
Yes.
And so that to me is, and you need from my experience, what I've seen, true change happens in this country when you have people when you have the oppressor, the oppressed people that are doing the oppressing, when they finally say, all right, we're done, right? I mean, from slavery to civil rights to suffrage, it was to even women getting, somewhat equal pay. I mean, even though Hillary Clinton championed it, but there were a lot of dudes that were behind equal pay. So that's when a lot of change happens, sadly. So that's what I have to say on that.
Okay. Any other comments? Anyone wants to chime in?
Oh, sorry. I did have to say one more thing. One of the panelists, not panelists, one of the
comment?
The guests had made a comment on the comment. Somebody had commented and said that, this whole togetherness, it's not achievable, but we can manage it.
Oh, that was Mercy. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And everything is unachievable until it's achieved. And something being achievable is you are thinking within the box. It is a restriction, because I'm sure when the Wright brothers were trying to make airplanes, when the slave masters that took the idea to start inoculating people vaccines from their slave, those things were all unachievable. Planes, cell phones, they're all unachievable. But if you have the mindset that it is achievable, then you really open up a door to having even greater things happen out of this relationship than just saying we can't do it.
Sabrina, I want to hear from you. What you have to say?
As regards Black Lives Matter, like, I'm all about it. I think though it's like we haven't made the space in the movement to have this type of discussion. That's something because right now, because of the world falling apart, there are these immediate issues that everyone is kind of run to. But when hopefully things are calmer, we have more spaces, which I would love to create perhaps in my day-to-day life, to talk about the importance of Black Lives Matter. Because when the police are whooping on somebody's head, or when someone is shooting, they're not looking for your accent. They're not looking for your, what country you're from. They see some Black folks, and that's what they're going for. So in that regard, I think that it has helped to pull people together, as long as we are, again, thinking about ourselves as Black. If we're not, because I differ from Fon. I'm blackity black. Like, I'm all the way Black. And I believe in, like, the African diaspora, all of that. Like, I'm that sister. So I think that we, and we have, of course, it has its connotations. There can be divisions, but I think in the world in which we live right now, for my sanity, need to focus on that. I'm Black. When I see another Black person, I feel, even if they don't feel it, I feel a kinship.
Okay. So I want to switch this a little bit and ask Chris and Jerron. For the Black people in America, the African Americans,
I feel like that is one.
Are you there, Serena?
Yeah.
Are we okay? All right. Chris, are you there? Okay, perfect. So I want to switch this a little bit and say, for Chris and Jerron, for the Black people, you're good? Okay. For the Black people that say Africans don't understand their wounds or what they went through, slavery, should they also consider the fact that Africans went through colonialism as well? And that was very difficult and tough. And I think, Shola, you also kind of highlighted that with with Portugal taking over some parts of West Africa. Should we also consider that and see that we also went through some things?
I mentioned earlier that we haven't been educated. We've been indoctrinated. So a lot of people, a lot of African Americans see it that way because, again, our history, as far as what we've been indoctrinated in schools, began with slavery. And so we weren't taught about what the Africans on the West Coast were doing prior to slavery. Again, I mentioned King Mansa Musa. This man was so rich. This African man was so rich that if he woke up with Bill Gates' money, he'd jump off a pyramid. That's how much money he had. Like if, Bill Gates woke up with Oprah's purse, he'd be a little upset because he'd be broke. Mansa Musa was the richest man the planet has ever seen. And he was he came from the western central part of Africa. The first university in the world was in Timbuktu. That was Central and Western Africa. That wasn't Egypt. People don't know the history of the continent nor the individual countries. They don't hear things like the trip to Timbuktu and back, which is a travel that South Africans used to do all the way to Egypt and back. you know, and so there's a connection in the continent, but all African Americans know is what we were taught. So we say, oh, well, our plight, everybody wants their plight to be the worst. Oh man, my thing about it, my parents, Jerron, you might have heard this before. Everybody, man, I had to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow. You know, people always want their empathy to be heavier on their story.
Yeah.
So they're going to say, oh man, you guys don't know. You know, we went through slavery and no one ever went through anything like slavery. You hear Jews in this country say, oh, well, we went through the Holocaust. Nothing was ever worse than the Holocaust. You cannot quantify how bad something makes someone feel compared to how something made you feel. I can't say that my loss of life in my path has been worse than Jerron's or worse than anyone on this panel, because that's my experience versus your experience. And so we always try to equate and quantify pain and all. A butt kicking is a butt kicking. Being taught wrong is being taught wrong. You know, I need to learn more African history, and I would think that Africans need to learn more African American history, but learn it from one another. Don't go outside of our community that we need to create together to learn these things so we can get truth. Don't be mad if your feelings get hurt. You know, there's some painful facts that need to be put out there, both about African Americans and Africans. We need to be able to hurt feelings like families do. You know, we go to a family barbecue, it might be a fight, but by the time the fight is over, those same two people are playing dominoes together. You have to have those open we have to be willing to learn. Like I was learning from the brother today about the Brazilians and the Portuguese. Now I know that there's a heavy African population in Brazil. I met a guy from Brazil. I asked where he was from. I was like, oh man, you don't look like the Brazilians on TV. He said, man, most of the Brazilians look like me and not what you see on TV. And so that type of indoctrination, when we look at TV, we think all of the people in South America look like Mexicans or light complected. And most of them don't. They're mostly darker complected people like us. And so just those indoctrinations, those needs for my pain to be bigger than your pain, once we get beyond that, beyond the ego of that, and we continue to have dialogue like we're having today, I think it will heal itself.
Well, I think. So wait, I'll come back to you, Jerron. Let me just read some comments. Come back to Jerron, and then we can round off with a final question, okay? Because this is already 1 hour, 11 minutes, you guys. Okay, so the comment from Linda, Black Lives Matter movement, if you check out their mission statement, Black Lives is not their focal point, in spite of the title. So now Jay Pulaski says, the Black Lives Matter movement and Facebook was a great catalyst to identify people hiding low-key racism in their hearts and minds, like a spotlight shining on the hearts of people exposing themselves, right? So Real Life Houston Living said, great point, Mfon, unachievable until it's achievable. I'll add that after it's achieved, once it's on its way to becoming the norm, then it's on its way to becoming the norm, right? Doyi said, I love this panel. I echo that, Doyi. I do love this panel. So Jerron, you want to add, and then we can ask the final question and round this off.
All right. So what I was going to say is that I think the overall thought process has to be on why we all here. Like in general, whether African American, Black, whatever title you want to put in front of you as a person, we're all here under the concept of wanting to thrive. Like that's no matter where you're from. That is the ultimate goal, is you want to thrive for yourself, for your family, for your lineage, and so on. I think that there's a responsibility that comes to a point to where we start to ask ourselves, why are we not thriving? You touched on media. And one of the things that I point out to people all the time is that no other form of person, mainly the African-American male, is seen as a threat. Like, it's continuously presented as a threat, whether it's by the music that we choose, the videos, the imagery that the news puts out. It's always the same fear. The population is what, 13% African American, and I'm assuming that they throw African in that same count there. To sit there and say that, I don't think the Black Lives Movement aspect, to the point touched earlier, really has caused the separation unless you choose to it, because at the end of the day, when those red and blue lights are flashing behind you, you're Black. If your skin is of a darker tone, you're Black until a lawyer's come to get you out of jail if you survive that encounter. and even at that point, you're still Black. Once you go to the courtroom and they're still putting you there, if you go to jail and have to go to prison, you're going to be Black, or you're going to figure out, are there any other Nigerians, any other guy? Is there any other group of people for me to tackle along with, because we have to survive in this environment?
Yeah.
But I think that we have to unify at the idea of no matter what you identify with, we're all here to thrive.
Yes.
And I touch on the fact of community because the one thing that you continuously see is communities thrive in America. Like that's really what it is. The communities thrive. The separation of, well, I'm over here and this is us and this is them. If you don't control your community and you control your environment, you don't thrive in America. And on a larger scale, I read a lot from Dr. Claude Anderson, and he explains things in a way of saying there's a lack of community. But I started looking at it when Chris and I used to work together. So I spent a lot of time talking to one of the people that was of the Jewish community, and I learned that the reason why the Jewish community thrives is because they function based off law. They don't function off like, well, I want to be Jewish, I want to be here. They choose where they live, how they function, based off where's the synagogue. This is the center of our community. We're going to live here. So they create community there. If you go to any Chinatown, you see we accept you, but every business there has whatever that local language is. If you go and see a Hispanic community, they may be from different parts of South America, period. The buildings will have Spanish on them, but they function together. It's when you go into the quote unquote black neighborhoods and you see there, you'll see other cultures own the buildings and the businesses. So they're taking that money and it goes out. We have this thing now where we're like, support a black business. And my thing has always been, you can support the black business, but ask that black business, are they supporting the black producers that are giving them the goods for that business? Because if they're not, you've added maybe an hour to the money in the community, but then it goes someplace else. So I think really we have to start looking at it from, like you said, not what our differences are, but we're all here to thrive. Like as an African American, I'm looking for opportunity now. I tell people this is the first time in the history of being in America for black people that we actually have a chance at generational wealth, being able to build something in there. When people talk about Tulsa and the fear of, well, they won't let us do this, the thing I tell everybody is this. Do you really think the Ku Klux Klan has the gall to go into a black neighborhood now and try and terrorize when you have gang members with better guns, you have people who are actually legal gun owners willing to fight for what they have, but you have to stop being in fear to the point earlier of what happened 80 years ago.
Wow.
Like there's a statement that black people use, and I'll clean it up, but I wish an MF would. When do you start using that for terms of building some equity and building unity amongst people and creating that community?
Wow. So you guys, people are enjoying this conversation. Those in the comments, if you're loving this, just put the clap emoji. We want to see, give us some energy. Put the clap emoji if you're watching, so you're loving this. So some comments, right? People are saying, so I think this is your sister, Stella, if I'm not mistaken. She's like, thanks, Nia, for organizing this. I enjoyed this. Sharon said, great panel and conversation. Thank you, Jerron, for participating and sharing this. I'm very proud of you. Keep doing greatness. Thank you all for the speakers here addressing this topic. All right, so final question. I want to hear from every single person, very brief. Tell us what's the possible solution to all of this. I feel like, Jerron, you touched on it a little bit, but what is a possible solution? We know this is not perfect. This is not going to help everything, but we can try to suggest solutions.
I think I can start.
Okay.
I think the perfect solution is not going to be easy, but we have to remember, as Chris said, we have been brainwashed. Like black people need to be educated. And I think by knowing who we are really, that's the only place we can start by, destroying that disconnect that we have like between black Americans, Africans. So I think education is a key, like for people to really know who they are. And then I think I'm going to be very brief, and then I think that's, for me, on my point of view, I think that's the real solution.
And this is something we always say, even in Africa, right? Education is power, knowledge is power. Who wants to go next?
Me.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back. Piggyback what he said. Like we should just be educated.
Okay.
I remember some people on the Empire cast. They went back to Ghana because they got educated, like how the slave trade happened. I've been to Ghana, and I know, how the slave trade happened in Ghana, stuff like that. Because I got educated when I went back to Ghana to know, like, okay, how did the slave, got on the boat? How did they came from this and this and that? So I think education is key. Like we just have to be educated on each culture and understand each culture.
Awesome. Well said. Before anyone else comments or says anything, let me just do this. Everyone in the comment is dropping the clap emoji. You guys, they are excited. Look at this support. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. I feel happy. I feel energized. Thank you guys. All right. Any other solutions? Who wants to go next? Chris, Shola, Mfon, Sabrina, Jerron.
I'll go because I do have to get on the highway. And one, I want to say, one of the solutions I believe is what somebody put in the comments. We need to do this again. If it's us, I would love to see you guys. I'd love to meet you guys on a personal level.
Okay.
I know Jerron already, but I would love to get you guys so that we can connect and do the things, because it's talking is one thing, but my mom raised me and she said there's a difference between doing something and being an armchair revolutionary. And that armchair revolutionary will just sit in the chair and tell you about all the things you should do, but it won't participate in the things that they have to do. And that's the hard part. So I would love to build a relationship with the other, I guess, 6 people here that I haven't met before. Because God brought us to this together for a reason. Like I see these faces that I haven't seen for a reason. I don't know the reason. I can't calculate that well in math the way God does, but I know we're here for the same purpose. We all have a common want for the African American and an African community to be one. I think that would make us the strongest nation on the earth. We already are, but we'd be able to identify that we're the strongest nation on the earth. Yes, you can give me a Nigerian name. Yes, you can. I would love to have a Nigerian attribute. Yes,
who is this Chris guy though? Like that's okay. So you're welcome to the family. Okay.
Thank you. I felt I was always there. It's more of a welcome back to the family. How about that?
Welcome back to the family. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, but if we can continue to do these things, have these dialogues, and get together, if it's just for lunch together, to show other people that African Americans and Africans can learn from one another and get together and build and dialogue without it being this I'm better than you attitude, I'm different than you attitude, because the differences are so minute compared to the likenesses. And so if we can do more things like this, have more dialogue, invite more people in, I would love to stay connected, at least with the 7 of us, the 8 of us, whatever it is. I would love to stay connected and have these conversations and come back and do this again. I have people that didn't get to see this. And I'm sure they would love to hear another dialogue and input and ask questions and learn. And we could probably learn from them as I've learned from you all today. And I just want to say thank you all. I do have to get on the highway, so God bless you. And yes, get back with me. Uche, if you're out there, I need my Nigerian name as soon as possible. So I will be getting with all of you guys one way or the other to find out what my Nigerian and also my Congo name would be, brother. I ain't forgot about you over there. So yeah. So it's been a blessing. God bless you all. And I'll talk to you guys later. All right. Peace.
All right. Mfon, do you want to go ahead and give a solution, possible solution?
Well, I was just thinking that our leaders that we have here are Black leaders on the platform that they have. Are these things really discussed? Do they even mention these things? Is it something that they care about? Is it something they recognize? Wow. And then 2, is this something that as Black people know how to church? And so the church is another place where when the church says, you should try this and try that, people actually listen. Yes. And those are 2 areas and 2 avenues that I would really love to see really involved in this. But education, I agree with everybody else. Education is key. It can happen through those 2 avenues as well.
Well said. All right, Jerron, you want to go next, and then you go to Sabrina, and then Shola.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. Honestly, I think the thing that can be done is go meet your neighbor. Like when it's really as simple, because I know everybody's not gonna go research, everybody's not gonna go join an organization, but I think that I'm big. Like I said, I'm big on community. Sometimes it's just as simple as saying, if you have a Black neighbor, African or whatever, go meet your neighbor. Like we come from communities where our parents could go borrow sugar from the person next door. They knew the neighbor. If you lived in the neighborhood, everybody knew that's so-and-so's kid. What's he doing over there? Like, take the time to get to know the person next door. If it's an African person that owns the store, get to know that person in that community. That's one of my favorite things about growing up in Compton. There were Black-owned businesses. People knew me. They knew I grew up. Even if they were not Black, I still go home now, and people that own those same stores say, "How is your mom doing?" You know, like there's a point where you just have to sit there and say, "Get back to the basics." If you're not going to go back and learn the history, that's fine. That may not be for you, but understand who that person is. Care about that person's business, because when protests and all those things happen, and the first thing people put up is Black-owned business, and you stop, but do you know that owner's name? Like, do you take a minute to just get to know the people that are in that community and build that back up? And I think it starts there. Houston has a wonderful African community, so you definitely can go to the stores and do different things, and you know, shrines of Black, all these places you can go to and meet people, but you just got to be able to embrace another person that looks like you.
Amazing. So I think we lost Emmanuel. Hopefully he can come back so we can close out. But Sabrina, you want to go next?
Yes. I think education is key. And one thing with these types of conversations, they need to happen on multiple levels. So that you have to be sure that you're not just preaching to the choir, because all of us are here voluntarily. We feel a certain way. Obviously, we see a problem. We want to address the problem. But the more difficult conversations come when you need to talk to your elders, because we know that might be slightly dangerous, because you need to be careful in how you address what they've told you, because you always have to be respectful, of course. You need to talk to children. You need to talk with the person who makes an ignorant comment that should be addressed, as opposed to rolling your eyes and just kind of counting them off as being silly. So we have to carry the conversation out beyond where we are now, and beyond those who are like-minded. And beyond even those who are readily receptive, because those are the people we need to really address. In addition to continuing our conversations.
I love that, having a conversation on multiple levels, and I think that's important. That's key. Shola, take it away. Take it away.
All right. So I actually love having this. It was awesome. Beautiful people. Everybody is my people. I feel so connected to each and every person here. And I think that the solutions that y'all brought up are very key and instrumental, very much. But furthermore, there's no authority, right, in the African culture. There's no true authority over it all. There's leaders, and we know how our leaders are in Africa. and then here, there's no authority. Who are we going to look to? Is it Jay-Z? Is it Diddy? Like, who is the actual real authority? There's no authority. So I say that we seek the true authority. All of us should have, or I assume have access to a Bible. And in that Bible, and again, I know it sounds like this may be like a religious thing that I'm saying, and it's not. It's just only where we can find any real history beyond what we've been taught. And you look in places like Deuteronomy 28, and you look at places like Isaiah 29, and I'm rambling these off. Maybe you can go back and watch this and try to get these scriptures. What you'll see is that we've been called the chosen people of God. And that's really hard to digest, because it really doesn't look like it. It feels like it sometimes, right? But it, for whatever reason, it also doesn't offer any time. No, but it sometimes it feels like it, right? And the way that we're going to be able to connect is to connect back to the source. I'm an electrician, right? So by trade. And I know that once you connect back to the source, everything comes back to life. Right. We will come back to life, and we will, if electricity is going on and you're being pulled into that electricity, there's no way you can pull. When that current starts going through you, there's no way you'll be able to disconnect. Wow. So the power is in connecting to the authority. And then I guarantee you, all the conversations that we talked about on multiple levels, the going and meeting and greeting your neighbor, all that will make so much more sense, and it'll be more fluid. Like all the things that we talked about, business, all those things will start to make so much more sense, and it'll be cohesive, and it'll be something that can be sustained. It's not going to be, oh, well, it's just this now, but now it's that. No, let's connect with the authority, the Most High, and then I guarantee you this stuff will tide over.
All right, Shola, I had no idea you were very connected with the Most High. Look at you. Look at you. Okay. You guys, this has been amazing. Let me read some comments and then we close this out. So Sharon Kendrick said, yes, being open-minded and getting to know those around us as individuals while embracing and sincerely striving to understand the cultures that make them who they are, essential to educating ourselves to be better people on all levels. So Linda said, great show, Nia. We have some other comments. So Jay said, I think I got the name wrong, but this guy talking, that's you, Jerome. He's saying you have a valid point. So Wanda said, they should own up to their involvement in the slave trade. I think this is back to the Europeans. This is a little backwards. Let's see, what other solutions? Oh yeah, this is a good solution. Expose the true history, break away from organized religion, start business. Biogon, really? You want to start that? But everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for joining Conversations with Nia today. You guys, we cannot resolve this today, and I know that I'm not inept, I understand, but I think that I just want us to start having these conversations, right? Start getting to know each other, getting educated, know each other very well. Like I said, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I know what I went through. I know what was said about me being African, and it did not feel good. And I know what my community says about African Americans. So let's start educating each other. Let's start being catalysts for change. Let's start understanding each other more, because together we are what? We are powerful. Together we can conquer. Together we can do so many great things. I hope you guys enjoyed today's panel. Panelists, thank you so much, Shola. I appreciate you. Sabrina, girl, you are fire. Mfon, wealth of knowledge. Victoria, thanks for sharing your experiences. I love you, girl. Jerome, we don't know each other, but you came with the truth. And Chris, who's no longer here with us, and Emmanuel, who popped out. Everybody's asking for a part 2. We're going to do part 2 for sure. You guys want to come back for part 2?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So I'm going to end the live. You guys remain here. Okay, don't go out. End the live, but remain here. You guys, thanks for watching Conversations with Nia. Please, for sponsorship, ads, guest appearances, email niablackstudios@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.